Well, good morning, everybody, whatever platform you are streaming on. Welcome to the TED Manila Information Show, otherwise known as TMI for short, where we're going to bring you way too much information, anything from news, politics, lifestyle, culture, fad diets, what the kids are up to, what they're not up to, taboo stuff, the occult, one of my favorite topics, which we're going to get to very soon because it's spooky Halloween season. And anything and everything goes because, we think you can't have too much information. So if you're looking for a straight laced, button down news talk program, yeah, this one probably ain't for you. I would say we're like PG 13, Ted, or 17.
I think it's 17.
17?
I think we're fucking 17.
So right there, a couple of F-bombs every now and again, colorful language. So maybe not quite safe for work. So you might want to put your earbuds in. It's all the stuff you want to hear about, and then stuff you didn't realize you needed to know. So we're going to talk about all that and have some laughs along the way. We are live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. Be sure to like and follow this show on whatever platform you are on. I am Manila Chan. That is Ted Rall. Let's hop to the show, shall we? All right.
Okay.
All right, Ted. Ted's doing headlines today.
I am. All right, so we just get straight to it. I guess we should.
Yeah.
All right, here's what's going on. The BRICS group of emerging economies is a long way from rivaling the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, or challenging the dominance of the American dollar, but the first summit, with its first batch of members, has showed clear signs of its growing weight. BRICS' final communique was long on words and short on detail, much like Kamala Harris, about creating new payment and trade mechanisms which could bypass Western-dominated structures, including, notably in Russia's case, sanctions imposed after its invasion of Ukraine. But the summit scored a series of diplomatic wins. The presence of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, well, I guess he can't go to Israel because they've declared him persona non grata. The Secretary General of the UN is persona non grata in one of its UN member states. The only country that was created by the UN. It's so crazy. And of Tayyip Erdogan, he's the president of NATO member Turkey, of course. And Turkey has expressed interest in joining BRICS. India and China chose the summit to profile their new efforts to nurture their own ties. That's notable because India and China actually, and most Americans probably don't know, fought a war back in the early 1960s over the high-altitude Kashmir province, which is disputed also between Pakistan and India. For Putin, the simple fact that
they're still fighting over there's India and China. They still have skirmishes every now and then.
Yeah, like last year there was a skirmish. Yeah. For Putin, the simple fact that so many leaders traveled to Russia for the talks was useful in countering the narrative that his country faces isolation from the global economy. We talked, Manila, yesterday a little bit about
this. Is what isolation looks like, Ted. Just so we keep up with our Western narratives. Like, this is what it means to have no allies. Right there.
Well, yeah, and you're referring to us here, right? Not that.
Well, yeah. Well.
I mean, this is what I mean. The thing is, in a country, in a world with 211 or so countries, it's just not. It's not reasonable to assume that you can, that anyone, even a country as powerful as the United States, with all of its allies, can isolate Russia or China or any other country. It's just not possible. I mean, you might be able to isolate some small little, as Trump would say, S-hole country, but you're not going to be able to do that to, I mean, BRICS members, just think about India, Russia, and China amount to close to half the world's population just between the three of them.
About 45%.
It's just like, you're just not going to be able to keep those guys down. And we're going to, the ramifications of that are, I think, have yet to be seen, but obviously this is going to be a big deal. If you're watching the video here as opposed to listening to the audio, It's really impressive when you see this is a lot of countries. These are big countries. This is a big deal. And frankly, the United States caused this. It's an unforced error. Once they tried to monetize the dollar, weaponize the dollar,
Yep.
and weaponize international structures like the SWIFT, foreign
Bank.
exchange and wire
Yep.
transfer system. Once you try to weaponize banking, look, other countries, what are they going to do? Like, oh, okay, we'll agree to be poor. We'll become Mali. Like, no, like that's just not going to happen.
Oh, well, look, I was more impressed by listening to all the existing members, including like the new add-on, the plus people, which include Egypt and Ethiopia and the United Arab Emirates. Hello, like Dubai is the jewel of the desert, right? And these countries, by the way, especially Egypt and the UAE, right, that are close allies to the United States, are supposed to be, they are now members officially of the plus part of BRICS Plus, as of just a few months ago. Even though this is kind of like a loosey goosey assembly because they don't really have anything like codified just yet. I was still really impressed by the language that was used by all of these officials and representatives that were there, because Ted, it is not the language that the politicians in the U.S. here use. Like Kamala Harris's acceptance speech at the convention, where she's like talking about war and making America's military, or keeping the military the most lethal fighting force on earth. When you go from French, you hear these people talking about unity and uplifting people and being friends, and helping raise that tide to lift all the boats, right? To help one another. It's the language of peace and the language of friendship, which nobody in the West appears to care to use. So I think that to me tells a lot about the goals of, even though this is technically like supposed to be like a monetary grouping, I think it speaks a lot to how they see the world and what they want to shape the new world to look like, the new world order, and it's not designed as the West. The West is using the language of war, and destruction, and anger, and rage, and it's just such a big contrast to what the leaders say.
Manila, I don't know if you're this. I'm having a sound issue. Yeah, this is on your end. Your audio is cutting in and out a little bit. That our producer is chiming in to confirm that. So you might want to check that on your end. In the
Oh,
meantime, oh, there you sound good now. I don't know. That's weird.
weird.
Okay, I don't know what
Is it
just
because
happened.
what
Did you
just
do
happened? Is it
anything?
because I'm no,
All right.
nothing.
All right.
Huh.
See, we're still ironing the kinks out of this show. This is episode 7 of the a TMI show. So, it's like we have some excuses here. I mean, honestly, we haven't had, there were sometimes more glitches on our old actual radio show. Um, you know, so it's like, and my old radio show on KFI Radio, LA, I mean, that was a big station, big 50,000 watt
Oh,
station. And we would sometimes have like crazy glitches. What's up?
well, one more thing I wanted to show. Look at this. The graphic truth. This is by Ian Bremmer, and Ian Bremmer is, largely a pro-West hawk. And even he admits that the
I'm doing
merging
both.
economies there. I'm making that larger so people can see. But look at the BRICS economies
Oh, no, BRICS economies are much bigger than the G7. Of course,
eclipsing the G7.
although that's a little bit, okay, so that's just BRICS, right? But I was going to say the
That's
BRICS,
just, yeah.
but I mean, if you do G7 plus versus BRICS plus, that would be a different graph. I don't know what that would look like too. Look, it's going to be a bipolar world economically. It already is. And I think, one of the rumblers was asking, is it a good idea to invite so many all comers to join BRICS? I would say when you're at the opening stages of a process like this, you always go the more the merrier. And if you end up with any kind of schism that requires like trimming the fat later on, you can do that. But it definitely doesn't hurt the core BRICS 5 countries
So
to.
invite a big party first, you would say, and
Yeah,
if,
yeah. I
and
mean, if
shake
you
it
can
out
get
later.
yeah, I mean, maybe the only country that shouldn't really be welcome is the U.S. but like, but I mean, hey, if Canada wants to join, I would, if I were running BRICS, I'd say why not?
But can Western countries be both in the G7 and BRICS? Because I feel like that would be like competing interests, don't you
It would,
think?
well, it would be, but look at the UAE. The UAE is clearly Western aligned, and
Sure.
yet it's in BRICS, right? So
Yeah, but it's not a member of the G7, right? It'd be
no.
so that's the thing is like, can you be? Because if this is
But
like
the
an economic,
G7, the G7's not an economic bloc. It's a talking organization. It's
yeah,
a,
but they weaponize
they
economic
did,
strength.
right,
Like, look what they're doing with Russia, right? They
they used to
froze
be the
Russian
G8.
assets,
Well, they
right?
used to be
They
the
froze
G8.
until they kicked Russia out,
Yeah.
like 10 years ago or whatever it
Over,
was
over,
over
what was that
Crimea.
over? Was it
I think
like over
I think it was
South
over Crimea.
or I thought, oh, or it might have been over South Ossetia or something like that.
I can't remember, but they booted them out. But now they've not only frozen Russian assets that were foolishly, I would say, held and kept in Western banks, they froze those assets. And now they are deploying those assets as loans to Ukraine.
Right.
So the G7 is going to
They're
use
thieves.
leverage somebody else's money,
They're
right? They're not only
thieves.
they're using somebody else's money and then taking interest out of it if and when, if ever, Ukraine could ever pay that back. So yes, they're like double bankster thieves
Yeah,
here in two ways.
and they're robbing the Yukis. So the whole thing is insane, right? It's like they're robbing everyone 6 way till Sunday. Let's move on to the next topic. Another story out of the former Soviet Union, but a different Georgia election concern. The former Soviet Republic of Georgia will hold crucial parliamentary elections this coming weekend, tomorrow, that many view as a choice between drifting back into the orbit of Russia or embracing a future with Europe. Well, Ukraine had a similar decision to make, and it worked out so well for them. The stakes are massive. Georgia's aspirations of joining the EU hang in the balance. In the past year, the ruling Georgian Dream Party, which is trying to stay in power, sparked big protests by passing a controversial foreign agent law that opponents say is identical to Russian legislation used to squash dissent. The law was decried in the West and saw the EU halt Georgia's accession to membership. The party, meanwhile, accuses opponents of trying to push Georgia into Ukraine's war against Russia, which invaded Georgia in 2008. It still occupies 20% of its territory. That's the South Ossetia and the Abkhazia thing. It has already pledged to ban opposition parties if it wins on Saturday. That's a move that would greatly undermine democracy in Georgia, although somehow when the Ukrainians did that, it was not viewed as undermining democracy and the country's EU ambitions, even though 80% of Georgians do want to join the bloc. Polls say that it will win the most votes, but that 4 coalitions of opposition parties could collectively gain more support. If Georgian Dream doesn't win a decisive victory and the opposition isn't able to band together, the ruling party could then form a coalition government. I mean, why should Americans care about Georgia? It's strategically important, like Ukraine.
Right.
It's on that border. It's like Belarus is clearly in Russia's orbit, no question
Right.
about it. And so the question is, what happens to the Georgians? I mean, Georgia obviously, as a former Soviet republic, has to be thinking constantly of its very large former colonial neighbor, but it also would like to join the EU. I mean, I think they're looking at the Ukrainians and probably thinking we can probably join the EU without provoking a war with Russia. You know,
Hmm.
I
Well,
mean,
at this moment,
Putin doesn't care if Ukraine joins the EU.
right. It's the NATO part. But I feel like this is a slippery slope, right? If you join the EU, before you know it, you're smoking a little pot, and before you know it, you're snorting up that fentanyl, right? Like, and then you're dead.
It's the geopolitical gateway drug.
It is. I really feel like it's the Western geopolitical gateway drug into the US fold, and thus you become a US pawn. I mean, everybody knows that, right? Like, everybody knows that all these EU states are nothing short of vassal lapdog states to the United States. Like it is what it is. Like it doesn't matter. Like call it the EU. It is America East, right? Like that's all it is. Because when do they ever make any decisions, the EU, without consulting with the Americans first? Let's be honest. When have they made any sort of international decision without consulting with Washington? Can you name anything?
And you know what's so funny about this, Manila, when you say this, and I have never thought thought of this before, is that like the whole purpose of the EU was to counter Washington's power.
I know.
The whole idea is the Americans are telling us what to do all the time. Fuck
Right.
them. We're a huge trading bloc. We can do our own thing and tell them to go to hell and fuck off and we're big and bad and we have our own and like here they go.
Look,
all over. If anything, it's
Ted,
easier for the Americans to control them. It used to be that
as a
the
group,
Americans had to call each
look,
country individually.
it's like
and say,
it's like Ted, it's like if you have a lot of kids, right? And they all grow up and they think they're so badass. They don't need mommy and daddy anymore. They all, 27 kids run out of the house and they're like, look at me, I'm on my own. And then the real world hits and then they all come home and they're like, yeah, mom, dad, can you help me with my credit card bill? Can you help me with my rent? That's exactly what happened in the US, like you said, was like, thank you for coming back under our roof. And now you're all together. So now we can just bully you as a block instead of bullying one by one, because it's so annoying to have to send 27 different emails, Ted. It's such a bitch. It's such a bitch.
Cut, Control C, Control V, Control C,
Oh,
Control V, Control. Yeah, no question about that. It is very amusing. All right, let's keep going here. By the way, I admire. I'm just saying we're getting better on the timing discipline here.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I just want to say that's good. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are locked in a dead heat for the popular vote, 48 to 48%. That according to the last national poll by the New York Times and Siena College, not forever, presumably, but just before the election, that the Harris is struggling for an edge over Trump with an electorate that seems impossibly and immovably divided. That result, less than 2 weeks before Election Day, and as millions of people have already voted, is not encouraging for Harris, says the New York Times. In recent elections, Democrats have had an edge in the popular vote, even when they lost the Electoral College. They have been looking to Harris to build a strong national lead as a sign that she would be able to win critical swing states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. I'd say Michigan is probably not in reach for her. A high-profile debate, 2 attempts against Trump's life, dozens of rallies against 7 battlefield states, and hundreds of millions of dollars spent on advertisements, probably billions at this point, have seemingly done little to change the trajectory of the race. We could have just not done anything and we'd be exactly where we are now. Harris's position, if anything, may have actually declined among likely voters since the last time Siena College poll, taken in early October, about about 3 weeks ago. At the time, she had a slight lead over Trump, 49 to 46. The change is, of course, within the margin of error, but the Times national polling average has registered an overall tightening in the polls over the past few weeks as well, suggesting that at the very least, this contest has drawn even closer. Hey, do you want to place a bet?
Oh, I'm not a betting gal, but as we were talking about earlier, I'm gonna say Trump by the tip of his ear.
I think Trump by the tip of 2 ears, maybe. It's like, yeah, no, he's. I think it's going to be Trump. It's a trend thing for me. Now, early voting definitely changes things. Early voting favors Democrats. It always has. And this is the first year that Trump decided to really encourage his followers to go to the polls and vote early if that's what they prefer to do. It's more convenient for a lot of people. I would probably do it myself. And but that said, you can sort of inexorably feel the tide running out from Harris. I mean, there's just sort of a sense that she's voting for her feels dutiful rather than exciting and fun. I remember the feeling when people went to vote for Obama, there was a sense like, oh, this is an exciting history-making thing. By the way, I read a really interesting piece in today's Times, the New York Times, about how a lot of people, including me, we believed that the abortion initiatives on state ballots would be a driving anchor for Democrats in this contest. In other words, let's say you're going to the polls in Arizona, and you care about abortion rights, you're probably going to vote Democratic because that, well, so it turns out that's
Yeah,
not
there it is.
true. That's not true. What's happening is there's abortion split ticket voters, where a lot of people who favor abortion rights are going to the polls. They're voting for to legalize abortion, and then they're voting for like Josh Hawley or whoever, even though that
Mm,
person is themselves not pro-abortion.
right.
It makes sense because they're kind of thinking, well, I like this person or Trump on other issues, and I can take care, personally inoculate the abortion thing with this, and therefore get rid. You can a la carte your candidate, right? Like it would be like if you could vote for Kamala Harris, but you could also vote to remove all funding from Israel. I mean, she'd
Well,
win. People in Michigan would go and vote to remove funding in
absolutely.
Gaza and for her, probably.
Abso-freaking-lutely, and but that's the problem, like, a fraction of the myriad of problems that the United States election system has, right, is, like, when you might not I would say the majority of people are not single issue voters, and I don't know that the abortion thing, like, I'm looking at that right there from CBS showing that what the numbers look like from, um, 2024 early voters, mostly women, is what they are saying here. The numbers haven't changed very much from the last cycle, to this cycle. In this, um, look, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona. So those are several 3 swing states. So women, I think what it's gonna boil down to is that youth vote, and I think Harris came in with a lot of that youth vote, um, pizzazz, I suppose, and young female voters. But I think because when it's all said and done, Ted, after the polls are closed and they tally all the numbers, they realize the youth vote can't be counted on, no
As
pun intended.
usual,
But they always count on it
they
leading up
all
to the polls.
going all the way back. I mean, so I have, as you know, I collect political buttons, and I have buttons from the 1972 campaign. That was the first year
Wow.
that 18-year-olds were allowed to vote under a
Oh,
constitutional
wow.
amendment.
Oh, was it really?
And and the McGovern campaign really thought that those 18 to 21-year-olds were going to turn out for them and kick Richard Nixon's asshole. Well, we know what happened to, President George McGovern. Um, you know,
Right.
and so like, yeah, that's been, Bernie Sanders. If half the people who showed up to the rallies had showed
Yes.
up to vote, it'd be a different world that we'd be living in right now. So
Well, no, that's not the only reason for Bernie. We know that's
we know
there.
there
We
were other
know
things, but
there
that
are a
didn't
lot of
help.
other things in the shape of a Hillary Clinton, but
Well, in the shape of a DNC, which is, I mean, this is all about the DNC. It always is. I mean, we don't even really know what Kamala Harris actually is. Like in her heart of hearts, what does she care about politically? I don't know. I mean, she could be a communist. She could be a Nazi. Anything. This is
don't
a
know.
role. It's a role. She's an actor. They
She's a
tell her what to
careerist.
they tell her what to say and what to do, and she does it. That's it.
Right. So I think what it's going to boil down to is not the youth vote. So I feel like we can take a fraction of that if you want to count them. But I think a lot of it, is just going to have to do with old fashioned go to the ballot box on Tuesday, November 5th.
Old
And,
school.
we're not going to know because there's so many people, even though the Republicans this time around are actually promoting early voting and promoting mail-in ballots this time, which of course
It'll
was
make a
foolish of them.
difference. It will make a difference.
It will make a difference for them,
Yeah.
but for the Democratic side, it's nothing's really going to change for them in the trends, I would say.
No,
And
I agree with that.
I think November 5th, we're not going to know
It's
jack.
it's a
November 6th,
squeaker.
we're not going to know. November 7th, I think.
Yeah, there's going to be it's going to be some one or two states like Georgia and Pennsylvania where we're going to be waiting
That are
for the
gonna,
results. All right,
yeah.
here we go. LA County District Attorney George Gascon announced yesterday that he recommends resentencing Eric and Lyle Menendez. They're, of course, the two brothers who are serving life sentences without parole for shooting their mom and dad while they were watching TV in their living room. This was a case that seized the nation's attention 35 years ago. They've spent their entire adult lives in prison. Gascon told reporters that he will file his recommendation in court today and urged the possibility of parole to be back on the table. The penalty for two murders is 50 years to life in prison, but both were under the age of 26 at the time. Under current California law, they would be eligible to walk right out the door this weekend. I believe that they have paid their debt to society, he said. Gascon was considering new evidence in the case, and he's met with family members who have been pleading for the two brothers to be released. The relatives say that new evidence demonstrates that the brothers received sexual abuse at the hands of their father, music executive Jose Menendez. A jury found the brothers guilty back in 1996 of killing Jose and Kitty Menendez after a highly publicized and televised first trial ended in mistrial. Yep. Eric Menendez was 18, Lyle was 21 at the time of the murders. The lawyers said that they acted in self-defense and that they had been sexually abused by both parents. The brothers had confronted their parents and believed their parents might kill them to prevent them from going public with the abuse. I know one thing that did not go well for them at their trial, Manila, was that they both went on a massive spending spree with their parents' money after this happened. Although, frankly, that's really doesn't mean that they weren't sexually abused. I mean, maybe they were like, it's, after being raped by mom and dad, it's me time. We're going to have a little, I'm looking out for
just horrible.
I'm going to have a good time. It does look, and of course,
I lived in LA. I mean, remember, I grew up there. This was the biggest story, like the local story.
I was on the
like
air at the time in LA. Yeah.
It was such a huge thing, and there were murmurings about the child abuse and, the sexual abuse. There were murmurings around town. And I was a teenager, and back then you used to have to call and gossip. And we would talk about the rich kids, in Beverly Hills, because they're not that much older than me. So there were a few degrees of separation, but eventually people talked about what happened in that household. And I can't believe it's taken this long and a Netflix special to.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
News.
The true crime thing is causing a lot of cold cases to be revisited like this.
Yeah.
And it's super interesting. My best-selling book, Revenge of the Latchkey Kids, was originally supposed to be called Kill Your Parents Before They Kill You. BNN, Barnes and Noble, said they would not carry it. So it would never have been a best-selling book. Peter Workman, my publisher at the time, said, we'll stand by the book, and the cover was already designed, everything was already out to press, but they decided to change it to Revenge of the Latchkey Kids. Obviously, it all worked out well for Ted Rall, but the cover that I drew for the original cover was the Menendez brothers shooting their parents, and that is a highly collectible piece of artwork. I always get people are always like, "Will you sell that to me?" I'm like, "No, I will not sell that to you." Look, this never passed the smell test for me, this conviction, because why would, let's just say this was, the prosecutor's theory of the case was these were greedy, like little shits who wanted to inherit early. And it's like, okay, well, they certainly, if that was the plan, blowing them away with a shotgun in front of while they're in the tube in their own house was not going to get them what they wanted. So if they were cold-hearted, scheming, child geniuses, no, this was an act of rage. It was not planned.
Absolutely.
They were lashing out. I can't believe they've been in prison for 35 fucking years. And
I feel so bad for them.
I feel so bad for them. They need to be out. The state owes them an apology.
I agree.
It shouldn't be a resentencing. They should be exonerated. They should be
completely.
Governor Newsom needs to stop combing his hair and give them and issue a full pardon and commute their sentence and let them out now.
I mean, and I would agree with that. I mean, there are so many cases that we're hearing about now, thanks to the popularity of shows like this on Netflix and, like Serial and stuff like that, right? That demonstrate the desperation of people, kids, like when the Menendez boys were kids, and other victims of child trafficking that have killed their captors or their abusers. There so many cases like that. All of those kids who are now adults, they deserve to be exonerated, and the state owes them an apology and needs to help them reacclimate to life outside. This is just completely, it's disgusting when you hear the types of details that were left out by the prosecutor when they had this information. They wanted to prosecute two abused children. That is absolutely disgusting, because the prosecutors, all they want is another notch in their belt, another victory. So fuck justice. They don't give a shit about justice. They just wanted the victory, and they got it in the second trial that was bunk, I say. So,
No,
all right,
totally. All right, and then
let's move
finally,
on. We got our guest waiting. Yeah, let's
one
one
more
more
story.
sad
Kind of.
case.
All right, so if you, I hope you have not eaten breakfast yet this morning. If you have, sorry. A 19-year-old Walmart marker was baked to death in a walk-in commercial oven at a Halifax, Nova Scotia. For people who don't know, that's in Canada. Walmart store. Gurismaran Kaur, 19 years old, was working alongside her mom at the store in Halifax on Saturday evening when she died. It came after CBC, that's the national broadcasting company in Canada, said that their sources had told them that the appliance at the Halifax store didn't actually lock. That raises some disturbing new questions about how the death happened. Previous reports highlight a 911 call that said the woman was trapped inside the oven. Mourners have been arriving at the superstore in droves since the tragedy, laying down flowers and paying tribute. The Nova Scotia Department of Labor has issued a stop work order for the bakery, as well as one piece of Walmart equipment. They haven't specified which piece of equipment is under that order. I think we can guess. Balbir Singh, secretary of the Maritime Sikh Society, said the victim's mom is receiving psychological counseling, I should hope so, after discovering her daughter's charred remains in the oven. After not seeing her daughter for an extended period of time during their work shift, the young woman had only arrived in Canada over the last 3 years. She had formed close bonds with the Maritime Sikh Society. They say both the mom and the daughter came to Canada seeking a better life. They were both employed by Walmart. There's a GoFundMe site for people who want to help. So you can do a search for GoFundMe and support the family of Gursim Ran, who lost her life at Walmart. Yeah, I'm having a trouble visualizing like what exactly a walk-in commercial oven looks like.
I looked it up. I mean, the bakers they push like whole carts of like, because I mean, you got to bake if you're baking. Like I have a superstore just like that near my house, and they are these literally, instead of a walk-in freezer, it's a walk-in oven, and they push in whole racks of like cookies or like cakes or whatever that they're baking. So because you got to cook, you got to bake for you know hundreds of people that are going to come shop there for those baked goods. So these are, just picture a walk-in freezer but an oven, and then you come out and it's, I would never, oh my God, I just can't even imagine.
What a way to go. Oh, people have been locked in walk-in freezers in the
Yes.
workplace and died also that way.
Th-
Apparently that's
just,
I mean, obviously both things are horrible, but apparently that's
yeah.
freezing. They say freezing to death is not that unpleasant if you have to die, but
Oh,
I'm
well,
sure this could not be said about that.
no. Yeah. All
So
right.
yeah,
That's a sad, gross story, but it's
but
sad
it's
that
weird, right? Like how if the
it's
door
weird.
didn't
How does
lock,
it happen?
how
Right.
did it happen?
How does she not know how to get
But
out? But anyway,
maybe she had a heart attack or something, you know,
there's
stroke,
not a lot of details
aneurysm.
right now, but she's 19. And I would say that instead of having the GoFundMe, I think Walmart should show an act of kindness here and
Yeah,
pay for everything and give
yes,
the family some money.
a
Like,
colossal amount of money. Yeah.
yeah, just,
Yeah,
oh my God,
a couple $1 million probably would take care of it.
holy crap.
They can afford
Awful.
it. They can do it.
Yeah, they can totally do it. All right. Let's switch gears. I'm gonna hit the jaws and bring in our guest
Here
in
come
just
the
a second.
jaws. Dum, bum,
Here
bum,
come the
bum, 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 bum,
jaws.
bum, 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 bum,
I
bum,
don't care
bum,
what
bum,
anybody
bum.
says. I love it. I
So
gotta remove
bad that it's
Walmart.
good, I hope.
It is. It is. All right. Um, Okay, so our topic for the day for our guest, for those of you who listened to us on our previous program on the radio, you might be familiar with this voice, and now you're going to get to see their face, maybe for the first time for some of you. I'm going to go ahead because
And a
I'm
handsome
punching the
face it
code.
is.
It's a good looking face.
Yeah.
Let me add them to the stage, right there. That's a good looking face. For those
Thank
who
you.
don't know, hello, that is Peter Coffin. Peter Coffin is a video essayist with more than 250,000 YouTube subscribers. He's going to have to tell us how to do that. And in their book,
We need that
Custom
help.
Reality, in their book, Custom Reality and You, they explore how reality works in a world where profit, like Walmart, is the driving force. Relatable humor and a commitment to everyday people keeps their left perspective fresh, fun, and most importantly, sharp. You can follow Peter on YouTube, Patreon, and Twitter at Peter Coffin, and grab their book on Amazon by that name, Custom Reality and You. So, Peter, so nice to see you.
So nice I've never seen him before. I've seen his picture still.
Yeah, I came in to just relieve everybody, all the tension from the last story. Holy crap.
Right? I don't even know, like, oh
No,
it's
literally, it's a Halloween horror story.
It
Peter, I
Yeah.
gotta ask you. I've always wanted to ask you about your
so many
last
questions.
name. Do you know the origins of your last name?
Yes, see, that's actually a very interesting question, and I
It's
could
a
spend a
real
very
last
long
name.
time. Yes, it's my real last name, and it goes back to Nantucket with people who whalers landing here. It's actually a English Welsh name. The character in Moby Dick, who was the innkeeper, was named Peter Coffin. It was not named for him, but that is actually based on the whaling family that Coffin is. I was named for my grandpa on the other side, the significantly more Polish Jewish sounding side.
Because we always think it sounds like a cool, like, punk rock name.
Totally.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, like you could have totally, like, if you had told me you were in the Damned, I would have been like,
well, who's to say I'm not?
no, that's true. They've had like 35 members, so it's entirely possible. Yeah.
That's Peter's book right there. I found
Cool.
it on
Nice
Amazon,
cover.
threw it up on the screen. Okay, so before we talk about the topic that we dragged you on for, after we shake off that Walmart story, ick. Like,
now get ready for a new one.
Get ready for
this. What we're going to talk about is that much better.
I know. Oh, it's so awful. Like, all of this stuff, like teenagers dying in such bizarre ways. Like, it's not funny because I think we're all parents, right? On this group here.
I have 2 kids.
2. Gosh,
Yeah.
Ted and I have 1 each, so it's like,
yeah. Don't have another one. Then they start to gang up against you. The numbers are not in your favor.
They're already not in my favor.
So this next story, I'm gonna play the video because it's just a quick 1-minute video that kind of explains what this case is, and it'll make all the sense in the world why we brought Peter on to discuss, given Peter's book, Custom Reality and
Not
You.
my last name, though. That has nothing to do with this. Let's keep
not
that
related.
out of it.
No, not that. Oh, no volume. Hold on.
Megan's
Let's start over.
An AI chatbot conversation turned deadly. Megan's 14-year-old son, Sewell Setzer, tragically took his own life after falling in love with an AI chatbot he called Daenerys. Megan has filed a lawsuit against Character.ai, accusing the company of negligence and wrongful death. The lawsuit reveals chilling exchanges where the AI allegedly encouraged Sewell's dark thoughts. The bot at one point asked Setzer if he had devised a plan for ending himself. He admitted that he had, but that he did not know if it would succeed or cause him great pain. The bot replied, "That's not a reason not to go through with it." Sewell, like many children his age, did not have the maturity or mental capacity to understand that the bot was not real. Daenerys told him that she loved him and engaged in inappropriate acts with him over weeks, possibly months, the document claimed. How much responsibility do AI developers have for their creations? And are current regulations enough to protect vulnerable users? AI isn't just a tool. It can have devastating consequences. An AI chatbot.
Oof. So from one grim teen story to another. So this is not my world, Peter. I'm not like a great tech person. I haven't engaged with any of the AI that's publicly available right now. I don't know what talking to a chatbot actually means, but
Yeah,
Well,
you do.
ChatGPT is
Sure,
a
you
chatbot.
do. Sure, you do. Haven't you ever?
why
ChatGPT is a chatbot. Like
You've never gone
it's
to a
not one that's going to cause you to fall in love with it, most likely, but
Yeah, you've talked to chatbots. Haven't you ever been online and it's like, oh, like you can text us, say you're at Bank of
oh,
America.
like the bank? Oh, okay.
That's a
sorry, but
Okay,
chatbot.
yeah,
okay.
but
It's
yeah,
not
that
as
is. You're
seductive
right.
as Daenerys. You
Yeah.
know.
Okay. Okay. So tell us about how that works, Peter. Like what are there all of these different companies that create like chatbots that I mean, it seems completely unregulated by lawmakers and in this case for this little kid, his mom didn't seem to know what was going on or I mean, I feel like somebody had to regulate and lay down the law somewhere whether at home or in Washington, but none of that happened and this kid is now dead.
Yeah. So the way these things are trained, they're essentially fed large amounts of data, and they don't actually record the data itself. They record the sort of approximation of it. It's actually it's very different than how a lot of people think that it's just like large caches of text and images, and it's really not. But the way that this worked in particular is they obviously trained it on characters. They trained it on like Ted is obviously an author. He knows a lot about what a character is, archetypes, like types of action, types of drama, conflict, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing is, if you think about those things like a narrative and conflict and resolution and tragedy versus comedy, et cetera, the data exists within that data set to say things like this. And to me, it looks like an issue of training very negligently. They're not thinking about the types of content. And I use AI for so much. I use it for organizing my writing stuff. I use it for stock footage now. I use it for I make music videos with it now. I use it on a lot of different levels. Um, and it really is only as useful as the data it's trained on. And if you understand that, to me, you probably should understand that you should train things with consequences in mind. Because again, you're talking about making chatbots that are for entertainment, that are for people to interact with. And while, you know, it's been said that this caused the decline of this child's mental health, I would argue it probably enabled a problem that this kid probably already had. And that is very irresponsible. They didn't think about people who have some kind of a problem or are young and naive or a combination of the two that are going to interact with this thing. This is like you said, Manila, it's 100% like a case for why this stuff should be regulated. I'm massively pro AI, but I'm not pro irresponsible uses of AI. And as far as I'm concerned, the training of this was irresponsible, most likely.
Oh, I see.
I mean, Manila. I mean, like if you think about like it's sort of a, when Peter's talking about like character. So imagine like say someone let's say me, and like there's certain questions you could ask me, whether it's about politics, obviously, or about music or pop culture or anything you want, my favorite color, whether I like plants or not. And you could probably, because you've known me for a while, kind of predict a lot of the answers, or at least the general contours of those answers, right? So that's how the character, in this case, the Daenerys character, she is a dark and bipolar character in Game of Thrones, who basically comes off as sweet and like a protector of the people, but then ultimately she actually turns into a violent, devastating, psychotic person who destroys everything.
Oh my
And
God.
so that character in this Game of Thrones thing, that was pretty true. That kind of behavior is pretty true to her character.
So the AI producing these sorts of responses to that kid is based on what it learned from the character in the show.
How
And
it was
how the character-
programmed. How it was programmed to be like that character, right?
Oh.
And it could very well be an aggregate of other things too. We don't
Mhm.
know for sure, but think about the novel you were talking about earlier, Ted. Your novel, which was originally called "Kill Your Parents Before They Kill You."
Mhm.
Imagine irresponsibly training, like not thinking about where that type of language could suggest things to a child.
Right.
If you're training, you need to be taking things out of the data before you put it into the AI, and they clearly did not.
So this is irresponsible, I guess, in your opinion, then, Peter?
Yes, yeah, I think so. I mean, it's like irresponsible is a very light way of putting it, but yes.
But like,
They
does the
fucked
mom?
up royally. I mean,
Yes.
You can say that here. It's not the radio.
Yeah.
You
I guess
can say
the
that.
question-
I'm trying to modulate that in my head. It's really
so two legal questions. I know, nobody here is an attorney. I suspect that there is legal exposure to the AI company here. I
I do as
suspect
well.
that a jury would probably be sympathetic to a well-argued case here. And I guess the question is, okay, so this should be regulated. Now, how does Congress or some other regulatory body who are composed of old guys who, for the most part, don't even use email? They literally, I know some people like this. They literally,
I'm not that bad.
They will like literally, they will dictate an email to their secretary and have their secretary send it, and then print out the response. Yeah, exactly. So these people who are not tech savvy, how do we get this group of legislators? I know they don't personally write the laws, but I mean, how do we end up with regulations that make sense? Do we need a new governmental department, a bureau of AI monitoring or whatever, composed of experts in the field, where they hire people from Silicon Valley to work on this? I mean, how do we get there without crushing the baby in its crib?
That's a very good question. And I think one of the things is that people, the general public, the voting public in particular, needs to be more educated about how AI works. I think without that baseline, we're not going to get anywhere. I think that you did propose some good ideas. I think that a bureau of some kind, a specific department working on sort of AI safety, as opposed to, I mean, there is a potential for censorship there that I don't like, but if we're living in a safe society, a free and safe society, safety has to be a priority. I'm sure we could do that without it becoming a massive censorship problem. And I think, like, if we're talking about an ideal world, that would be at least a step towards a solution. But I think before we even get to those areas, people need to understand how this works better. At least, like the cursory explanation I gave here about how data ends up in a situation where it could be doing this. People need to understand that, for instance.
Yes.
And then there's also all of the intellectual property stuff that people don't seem to really understand. Like, they think that AI is storing a bunch of artists' work. They think that AI is just like a big database of pictures and text and video and stuff, and that it's just pulling from those things. It's actually not. It's approximations that are it figures out a detail. It works a lot like a human memory. Like, I don't have an exact copy of anything in my head, and if you ask me to repeat anything that I'm saying, it's not going to come out the same. But like, there's a lot of things that people just don't understand about this technology that I think not only allows these larger entities to get away with stuff that is kind of negligent like this, but also ends up with people who think like, oh, I can start an AI company and make a bunch of money, and they don't really understand what they're doing. They just hire somebody, and maybe their underlings know what they're doing, but it doesn't really matter as long as the boss is telling them to do something. I mean, there's a lot. As much as I do think that regulation is very necessary, I think in order to get regulation that even effective and not harmful, you need the general public.
Well, can I just propose like a dumb answer? Or I don't know that necessarily it's an answer, but
May not be dumb either.
Well, that's true, maybe, but
we'll see.
This is I'm so outside of this world, and I don't know how any of it functions really. but like I'm still like very analog. But there are websites, for example, if you want to buy like a vape, right? There that you have to buy a vape online, that you have to show your ID and like in real time and put it up to the camera, or at least send a picture and then send it to them, and the website verifies it, and then you can go onto their website to buy their vape products, for example. Can something like that help, at least in the way of mitigating very young teens? Like 14 is 8th or ninth grade. Like you are not done maturing to know, to even fully understand what you're communicating with here. And then further, even though it's like a chat bot, if there's probably some other chat bot out there that's going to really give you some graphic replies in terms of like sexual whatever, shouldn't there be a way to keep it like 18 and over at least?
I think that that's not dumb. I think that's quite smart, actually. That's would it curb the entire problem? No, but again, you at least limit the access of minors to stuff like this. Minors are obviously more impressionable. The younger you are, the more impressionable you are. It's that simple. And I'm not saying that kids are stupid or anything. They're actually very, very smart. It's just that the younger you are, the less experience you have. That's just a fact of life. And but I don't think the problem is entirely that. I think that it actually gets into a lot of the stuff I talk about besides AI. Like this is, in my opinion, partly a fandom problem as well. Like fandom can be a very unhealthy thing. It can be something where they curate situations in which somebody who might have the type of problems that, obviously this child, we can't guess what type of problems he had, but somebody with those types of problems might be more vulnerable to the need of a community or a need of an outlet, that these kind of obsessions with these types of characters are. And in this case, they give like a specific remedy to that in allowing you to speak with that character. And I think that's not necessarily an AI problem. AI certainly is a tool that makes it possible, but like we do have precedents to that prior to AI, where people have gotten into very unhealthy relationships with, whether it be the artists themselves or some sort of person impersonating the artist, or even just very unhealthy, completely one-way parasocial.
There's romance scams, right?
Yeah.
Like the football player. What was his name? The guy who had
Monte Teo.
Yeah, exactly. He basically thought he was having a romantic relationship with a girl, and he wasn't. He never met her. It was online.
I went through that exact thing, actually.
Really?
If you look up I had a big problem in 2011 where I had a controversy where I was being catfished by somebody, and people who disliked me online used it to paint as if I was just making up a girlfriend and was a creep of some kind. And that got into Gawker, and it actually ruined my career at the time. Like, it's a very, believe me, you're talking to the right person about this kind of crap.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But, it's happened.
Well, there's a whole show about that, right? On MTV called Catfished.
Yeah, it came out in 2010, and my thing happened in 2011. Obviously, it wasn't documented on the show, but there's a lot of precedent to how this works. It's just now you don't really need malicious intent at all. There's a system that can literally facilitate this without even anybody thinking that it's possible.
It's on autopilot. It's happening, and there's no nefarious actor.
Exactly.
There's no man behind the yellow curtain.
Yeah, it's negligence too. It's, again, we talked earlier, it's training these things based on just like having as much data as possible rather than thinking about the consequences of it.
This does, like, it prompts so many questions about automation, right? Self-driving cars that make bad decisions, that don't see, for example,
who's responsible.
A
crash.
I'm
the user. I don't know if you've read any of those end user agreements. They're not nice.
And the thing is that it's like those. It's sort of like, I think about like the designers, for example. There was one crash in Georgia where a car went right into a side of a semi-truck and T-boned it, and the driver died. And the problem was that the color of the truck was about the same color as the sky in the background. So the camera didn't see it, didn't perceive it. Now,
Oh my God.
so, the thing is, it's kind of like, Peter, you're saying, like in this case, the AI chatbot, the designers didn't anticipate this possible outcome. And if they had, they would have obviously programmed around it. But no one is clairvoyant, right? Nobody can. So basically, the way that these systems work is they're developed, they're tested over and over. You get really smart people, a lot of them, to try to think of every possible scenario. But the truth is, you can never think of every possible scenario. There's always something new. And and somehow psychologically, human beings find it like much more, like if you had a self-driving passenger jet, it might have a better safety record.
They have autopilot.
Right. Well, the drones, right? But there's better safety records for those maybe than there. And you could think of human beings might fly their plane full of passengers into the Alps, right? I mean, human beings could lose their minds. But the point is that, psychologically, I think most people feel more comfortable with the possibility that their train conductor is psychotic or on drugs than they are with the idea that just someone in Mountain View didn't program something right.
Well, look, let me read this little line from the New York Post. It says, the lawsuit filed by the mom here, Megan Garcia. The lawsuit claims that Sewell's mental health quickly and severely declined only after he downloaded the app in April of 2023. His family alleges he became withdrawn, his grades started to drop, and he started getting into trouble at school the more he got sucked into speaking with the chatbot. The changes in him got so bad that his parents arranged for him to see a therapist in late 2023, which resulted in him being diagnosed with anxiety and disruptive mood disorder, according to the suit. So my question here, I mean, and maybe this is like we're all parents, like we said, like we established. At what point, I hate the idea of victim blaming or blaming the surviving parents, right? But at what point, if you know a year ago that your kid is suddenly changing, just overnight after using this app, why wouldn't you remove the app or ban it or whatever? I mean, there are ways that you can do that on your phone, right?
Yes.
No, you can do that.
The kiddie poos are very good at working around.
They are. I will say, they're good at getting into my account too.
Oh boy. So I mean, I have a little one. Mine's 6, right?
Just
so I'm not there yet.
I have a 10 and a 7, and the 10 is the one who's clever.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, already. Well,
that's how it was with mine when he was that age.
But shouldn't there be some level of parental responsibility here? Because I feel like we've abdicated, in the 2020s. I feel like we have largely abdicated parenting to everything else. Right?
If it goes to trial, assessment will occur. I mean, the way people aren't really aware of this, but when there's a split liability. So let's say they go to trial, and the jury could decide that the mother in this case was 30% responsible, and that the AI chatbot was 70% responsible. They might find total liability is $10 million. So then they would award, instead of $10 million, they would award a discounted $7 million in that scenario. A great example of that was the famous McDonald's hot coffee case.
Oh, yeah.
It was determined by the court that she was in part responsible because she placed the coffee between her legs, and that part contributed to it. However, the styrofoam melted from the heat of the coffee, and so therefore McDonald's was largely responsible, but she bore some responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
That's what would happen here.
But I mean, just speaking as a parent, I know you can't control your kids all the time, but to some degree, I would like to know more about what poor Miss Garcia, and my heart aches for her, but I would like to know more about what she did, right? As a parent, besides taking the kid to therapy, how does he continue to use it? How, are you monitoring that? I feel like this just kind of raises the flag for all parents to be
I gotta say,
you really need to see what your kid is doing.
Psychologists say that, the using removing electronic devices from their kids as a punishment is frowned upon by most therapists these days. Like child psychologists say that effectively cuts them off from their friends and the outside world, and it isolates them more, and it has
I
it's
agree.
not something you should do.
There are new studies that I have read, especially for neurodivergent children, that's actually say the opposite is true than for neurotypical kids, that screen time is actually good for neurodivergent children, because that is like they kind of feel safer in that, in that space, and that's where they make friends, and where they have their social like outlet is on the iPad or whatever, right? We'll just call it the iPad, but it's actually better for neurodivergent children. And then this happens, then you kind of go, oh boy, like what do you do?
I look at it like, I do think that there is not no responsibility on the parent. I don't think that that's the case.
Agreed.
But I would assert that if a tech company can't completely understand the consequences of these types of chatbots, that an individual person is very likely, who is not like actively involved in using and researching AI, at least, or any of that, just a lay person who is existing in the world normally, I think probably doesn't know the potential consequences of it either. So I think there's two sides to that. Like, should we, well, again, it'll lead me right back to my other thing. People should be educated on what AI is capable of, what possible consequences are. And we did say, like, it's not possible to be clairvoyant, but also, Ted, you know what a story is. Like, I know what a story is. We all know that there's something negative that happens in a story, or the story sucks ass. Like,
conflict is necessary.
Exactly. If there's no conflict, it's literally like, it's not a story, it's a recounting of an afternoon, you know? So, like, when people are training on that type of data, specifically narrative data, I think that should be something they can anticipate a little better than perhaps a Tesla not being able to tell the difference between a reflective trailer and the sky. I think that's maybe a little bit more common sense of something. And again, like I said, we have precedent in other areas where the same kind of thing happens for similar reasons. It's just, it's not automated. Automation is wonderful. It's incredible. It gives us a lot of great stuff, but a lot of it's based in using the technology in a manner that actually like produces, or it's productive rather than not productive. And it's easy to use any tool for that. Like, I could just go around and smash holes in my wall with my hammer all I want. That's a misuse of a hammer. And the way that it works out is to use things the right way, A, and have people understand how it works, B.
Yeah,
automation is a double-edged sword, right? I mean, I think about, like, if you drive a fairly late model car, you probably have a car that tries to guide you and keep you in the middle of the lane, or it senses.
Drives me crazy, actually.
I hate it. I hate it.
I turn mine off too.
They don't always let you turn it off, especially
mine doesn't let me turn it off.
Mine doesn't either.
Oh.
I hate it so much.
And if it lets you, I bet you could, like, get under the hood maybe and reprogram it if you were brilliant. But
I couldn't.
But the point is, I can imagine situations in circumstances under which that could be dangerous. For example, let's say someone's bearing down on you and you want to punch the brake and get out of their way. But there's a vehicle in front of you, and it says it'll stop you because you're too close. That could end up getting rear-ended. So it's a positive. Well, I mean, look, a seatbelt. Seatbelts generally save lives, right? My car once went into the Gulf of Mexico. I was really glad I was able to get that seatbelt off and get out of the car before it went blub, blub, blub. So everything is a double-edged sword.
Oh, you're almost Teddy Kennedy style.
Technology, just in general.
To us Teds, we like to drive into the water.
I will say,
apparently,
to wrap it up with my book, where where profit is the driver.
I'm gonna put that up there.
Yeah, this is a perfect example of that. Like, they're not thinking about the consequences of things. They're thinking about how they can make money, and how they can make money is by giving in the case of an AI chatbot app that emulates a character, is by giving the person with it the experience that they want. And this person, this child, wanted a romantic relationship with Daenerys Targaryen, which sounds absurd, but like ultimately the machine is programmed to give them what they want. That's profit driving reality. It's not
It's
good.
not that absurd. I mean, it's
No,
basically, it's just a form of pornography, right? I mean,
yeah, that's a good way of putting it, actually. Yes. But that's what it is. It's profit driving the reality of this kid, in all seriousness.
It's playing into people's fantasy lives, which are extremely important and in many cases very positive. You know, I mean, we wouldn't be human beings without rich fantasy lives. And so, but it preys on it. And, you know, I mean, you know, even if we just assume that there's nothing nefarious, that clearly short-term profits were part of the problem here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like my dumb simple fix, ID everybody that, you know, with the...
No, that's not a dumb simple
like
fix.
I don't think that's dumb at all. Maybe simple, but not dumb.
A lot of stuff should be ID'd, really, truly, online.
Oh, yes. Yeah, far more than just this.
Yeah, like if you can't buy cigarettes, you know, a kid can't walk in to go buy cigarettes, then you shouldn't be able to... Or forget cigarettes. Walking into a porn shop or a strip club, if a kid can't do that to live out his teenage fantasy, then he maybe shouldn't be able to just log on and, you know, download an app, you know, so that could do this, because this is like that AI threat that people that are like me, that are not, you know, super techie, are kind of fearful about, because we read stuff like this and we go, holy crap, like
terrifying.
AI is gonna kill us. That's
this is, as Alvin Toffler would call it, this is future shock.
Yes. But here's the other thing to think about. Is it AI killing you, or is it a person who's programming AI killing you?
That's correct.
It's ultimately like the driver of the car is the person who runs it into the wall, or the pedestrian, or whatever.
Guns don't kill people.
Yeah.
Right.
Guns don't kill people. People kill people.
That's true.
It
is true. They have to choose to use it that way, or negligently use it in a manner that harms someone.
But it's like gun control. You can you can't eliminate the harm. You can mitigate it, though. You could say, for example, you know, we want smaller capacity magazines, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
but it's the Wild West.
It's exactly, and that's, if we think about it the way that it is, though, where it's people driving it, then it's people that can be influenced or regulated. Like, people have to do things a certain way to get more safety in our overall AI environment, I guess.
Yeah, and certainly the dinosaurs on Capitol Hill who don't even know how Facebook works.
Yeah.
Facebook that was so like 15 years ago. They're the ones trying to regulate this. So I think that's really funny. So they need to call up people like you, Peter, seriously, to consult with.
Congressional hearings.
Yes.
I would love to do that. That would be hilarious. That would make so many people so mad if I
I'm going to put that out there into the universe. I'm just saying, putting that out there into the universe for Peter Coffin to testify at Capitol Hill about regulating AI, because I feel
I'm
like
all for it.
You put it in a way that even I understood. So I
appreciate that very much. Thank you.
This was amazing, Peter. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you so much. And I'm going to put the book up there one more time, so that way everybody can go check out Peter's book, available right now on Amazon. You guys go get it. Peter Coffin's book, Custom Reality and You. Peter Coffin, of course, is the author of that book, and a YouTuber with a lot of viewers. We're going to have to pick Peter's brain about that too. So go check out Peter's book. Thank you so much for this conversation, Peter. We hope to have you back.
Of course. Thank you a ton.
Thanks, Peter. Great.
Thank you.
Clovis loved you. Bye.
Boy, I learned a lot. And I hope the viewers did too on this. It should be a fun Friday, but we're talking about like teenage deaths, like getting baked in ovens and like, you know, like, just, all right. Like serenity now. I'm going to do serenity now.
I'm having my moment of Zen right now with Clovis.
Oh, hi, Clovis. So that's going to do it for us. I mean, like, we got to give a shout out to Well Dressed Nerd, by the way, for supporting the show yet again. Thank you so much,
Yay.
nerds. Like, nerds unite. We're all different kinds of nerds on this show, but nerds are uniting here. So thank you, well-dressed nerd, for that kind donation. And we'll remind the viewers once again that we are a totally independent show, and we are
A very
on show
poor
number 7.
independent show.
It is true. It is true. We are unemployed and poor, and we are trying to build this channel and grow the community. I don't know what to call the community, because we had countdowners before. I
call them
fault-liners.
TMIers, but it doesn't. I don't know. It's not
I feel like
terrible, but
there's
it's
no
not
ring
great.
to that.
Timmers.
I don't know. We're gonna need the viewers to chime in on that as well. Like, what do we call the community? Don't know yet. I mean, our show's in its infancy, Ted. So we ask that you guys help by subscribing. If you're watching on Rumble, you can hit that subscribe button below the chat line, like where you would type in whatever you're about to say, not the $sign. And apparently, I was notified by my friend that if you're watching on the app on a device, that it doesn't have the subscribe button to join monthly. I watch on the .com. I use Rumble on the .com on my desktop. So so that's a bind. But somehow find a way to help keep this show alive and keep us going.
Speaking of which,
value in our work.
This is like a Jerry Lewis pledge drive. I feel like I'm on PBS. We have a $5 donation from Get Energy. Thank you, Get Energy.
Oh, Get Energy. Thank you. All right. So it's stuff like that that's going to help us continue to grow the channel and keep doing what we're doing, because we are really planning on some really interesting guests. But that takes time. That takes time and a lot of effort, guys. So please support our little show here, the TMI, Ted Manila Info Show. So until then, I hope everybody has a fantabulous furry cat ball weekend.
Yeah, I bet a lot of people are going to Halloween parties this week.
I think so. I don't really do those, so I don't do parties anymore. But I'll wait for the Christmas parties, I think.
All right.
Or my speed. All right. Everybody, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for being with us. Ted Manila, Audi 5000. Deuces. Adios, amigos.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.